स्वागत है आपका जी बिजनेस की खास पेशकश में। हम इस समय मौजूद हैं भारत की सिलिकॉन वैली यानी कि बेंगलोर में माइंडट्री के कैंपस में, और आज हम बात करने वाले हैं जेन नेक्स्ट बजट में आईटी और स्टार्टअप इंडस्ट्री की। क्या ये बजट आईटी और स्टार्टअप इंडस्ट्री के लिए भी जेन नेक्स्ट बजट साबित होगा? तो बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आपका जेन नेक्स्ट बजट, यस बैंक प्रेजेंटेड एंड पावर्ड बाय बीएसएनएल। और हमारे साथ यहाँ पर कुछ बहुत ही खास मेहमान हैं जिनसे मैं पहले आपका परिचय कराता हूँ। हमारे साथ यहाँ पर मिस्टर रोस्टोव रामनन हैं माइंडट्री के, जिनके कैंपस में हम इस समय मौजूद हैं। हमारे साथ श्री गोविंद राजन हैं, सीईओ फ्री चार्ज के। हमारे साथ मिस्टर रवि गुरुराज हैं जो कि चेयरमैन हैं प्रोडक्ट काउंसिल नैस्कॉम के। मिस्टर सिद्धार्थ गुप्ता हैं हमारे साथ फ्रॉम ट्रीबो होटल्स। श्रीवत्सन चारी हैं फ्रॉम क्लियर टैक्स हु इज़ वर्किंग ऑन द जीएसटी फ्रेमवर्क अलॉन्ग विद द गवर्नमेंट। और साथ ही रघु प्रगाडा है हमारे साथ फ्रॉम वोनिक whose success story is known to everybody. So thank you for joining us. So I'll start with Rostov. In fact, Rostov, you know, आपकी जो industry है, that's considered the biggest success story that India has produced on global stage. And बहुत सारी बातचीत हुई है आईटी इंडस्ट्री को लेकर, स्पेशली सिंस द टाइम मिस्टर ट्रम्प हैज़ बीन इलेक्टेड। आपकी उम्मीद क्या है इस बजट से? व्हाट्स योर टेक अबाउट द आईटी स्टोरी?
I think the following would be useful for the for corporate India and especially for the IT industry. I think the first, what shall I say, expectation is whenever the GST rolls out, they need to carefully think through the on-the-ground implementation issues, especially around registration in multiple states and some other aspects of it. If they don't get that right, it will create a huge amount of complications for industry to actually adopt it and make the reform successful. I think it's one of the most important tax reforms maybe in the last 50 years in India. It will create a lot of benefit for common man, but devil will lie in the details. So that's the first point that I wanted to share with you. The second is overall improvement in the tax administration. Today, unfortunately, the salary taxpayer bears the brunt from a compliance and a complications perspective in terms of generating money for the government of India. If they can do a little bit more reforms on administration, broaden the tax net, get more people involved in the tax kind of framework, that will generate revenue and help reduce the burden on the common man. Because at the end of the day, whether it is Make in India, where it's all the programs that the government is thinking of rolling out, if it doesn't benefit the common man, if the load of resource collection is not uniformly distributed across a range of assessees, it will create a lot of complications. So those are the 2 points that I had. Less of a specific to the IT industry perspective, but more for the common man and for corporate India. I would say those are the 2 most important expectations. Lastly, if they can think through all the implementation issues and make the tax year as January to December, that will be a big benefit to the IT industry, because then typically most of our clients are global and everybody follows a Jan to December calendar year as their financial year. Then India can also align to something that's globally standardized instead of having a separate April to March financial year.
In fact, we are told that that's also on the cards.
Yeah, on the cards. And I'm sure there must be some 20 implementation issues there as well. If they can think through those and get that also going from this financial year, so those 3 would be, I think, the most important short-term expectations for us.
Right. What stage is it? Is the technology and the framework keeping the pace with the intent of the government of rolling out GST, maybe not later than September 2017?
Good question. So the government has been working on the GST for quite a long time now. And since we work very closely with the government, there's a lot of, it's very interesting, there's a lot of email threads, there are a lot of message groups which go on. They've been very responsive, clarifying questions, setting up, answering a lot of the cases that will actually come up, and building a very, very expansive and a very ambitious plan for the rollout. It's something which is going to change the entire country. Everyone from a very small retailer in a tier 2 city to individual professionals to large companies are going to be affected. There are a lot of interesting things which have come out during the entire course, during the last year. Like he mentioned, one of the interesting things that come out is an incentive to collect digital payments. So this actually escaped the radar for a lot of people. But one of the interesting things is that if a merchant is going to be collecting payments digitally as opposed to cash, he'll have to actually pay a lesser tax rate on that. These things actually are like steps by the government to bring in a lot more people, get them more excited, get them more involved in the GST. One of the other principles of the GST is that if a larger merchant has to claim a tax credit, the other smaller vendors or other merchants will have to comply, will have to actually submit their returns.
Right.
So there is pressure on,
So automatically the compliance would increase.
Correct.
Automatically.
And the most interesting thing I think the government has done this time is, in previous cases when they were building out, let's say, income tax, VAT, TDS, they would build the entire platform themselves. Right now they're, going bullish on the India stack. They are expecting the ecosystem itself to create those avenues, create the platform, create the websites where people can submit the returns, and create the software for filing the returns. So it's not just responsibility in one place; it's distributed responsibility across the entire ecosystem, which I think is very, very nice.
खैर उसमें like Rostov mentioned, थोड़ा बहुत overlap है and शायद थोड़े कॉम्प्लिकेशंस भी हैं, मे बी थोड़ा और सिंपल हो सकता है, बट विल टच दैट पॉइंट. लेकिन इससे पहले रघु, आई हैव अ क्वेश्चन फॉर यू, बिकॉज यू आर पार्ट ऑफ द सो कॉल्ड द स्टार्टअप सक्सेस स्टोरी, एंड इट्स वन ऑफ द इंडस्ट्री और आई वुड से एरिया जिस पे प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने भी फोकस किया था व्हेन ही क्रिएटेड दिस, ही कॉइन्ड दिस टर्म ऑफ स्टैंड अप इंडिया, स्टार्टअप इंडिया. नाउ आपको लगता है कि एट गवर्नमेंट लेवल और एट गवर्नेंस लेवल जितना होना चाहिए उतना हुआ है टू क्रिएट द होल इकोसिस्टम वेयर द स्टार्टअप्स थ्राइव?
Yeah, I think what we've seen so far is, I think, just a start. Prime Minister has made a lot of right moves so far, but I think there's a lot to be done still to make it much more easier for startups to grow and the whole ecosystem to build. Case in example is the payments itself, right? If you clearly look at a merchant, he had to pay like a 2% or a 1% extra for accepting a credit card payment, right? And that itself is a deterrence for the payment piece. So they have to do a lot more in terms of incentives to drive some of these things. From a startup standpoint, they have announced some of these schemes, but I've not seen a lot of enthusiasms from startups. Maybe some of these guys would share in actually participating in some of these things, because those are not very clear in terms of how to go about benefiting from those. And that's essentially where, even when something like GST is coming out, my hope is that a lot of thought is going into it, because it's going to affect a large population. Either it's startups or GST or demonetization. I would like to see more thought going into the implementation piece, so that people don't suffer as much. As at least not in the cities or the towns, but in villages and in the tier 2, tier 3 parts. We've definitely seen some of those things happening, and that actually contributes to startups like us, which are catering to the B2C kind of environment, right? And we've started seeing some of those things to change, but I think a lot more to be done.
Right. In fact, इससे related question गोविंद आपके लिए है मेरे पास, and then I'm going to go to Ravi in conclusion to that question. लेकिन एक चीज़ देखी गई है इंडिया में कि now अगर हम पेमेंट सिस्टम्स की भी बात करें, it came into the center stage suddenly overnight because of demonetization. नहीं तो उससे पहले उससे लेकर भी जो एक आम आदमी था वो काफ़ी डरा हुआ रहता था. सेकेंड, ये जो प्रोडक्ट इनोवेशन है या फिर इन्वेंशंस हैं, इन सब में डू यू थिंक इंडिया एज एन इकोनॉमी इज़ कीपिंग पेस as far as innovation is concerned, creating new products is concerned, and also as a part of that process creating jobs is concerned, because ultimately that's what matters, and we don't have a very good scenario as far as job creation is concerned. आपका view क्या है इस पर?
I think absolutely no question. I mean, look at the kind of tech that we have built. Let's take FreeCharge for example, right? We started our wallet business in October of 2015. Which is what, 15 months ago. सारा जो टेक्नोलॉजी है, whether it is the debit credit engine, whether it is reconciliation, we built our own, for example, our own security and fraud management engine sitting here. After we looked at all the global pieces of software, we looked at some software from Israel, we looked at some software from America, and then we said we can build this in India, and we built it through, everything is made in India. Every single line of code has been written either in Bangalore or in Gurgaon. Yeah, and to say that we can't build that kind of tech, I think it's nonsense. Of course we can, and look at the quality of tech that we have. I mean, if you look at the wallet that we have, it is as good as anything else in the world, if not better.
Right.
Yeah. So there is, I don't think there is any dearth of talent.
No, but is there enough consciousness on the part of government to promote that?
Yeah, I'll come to that. Yeah. But you know, when you look at it from the government, nobody is expecting handouts and incentives from government. Yeah. I mean, to say that the job of the government is to make sure that you have incentives, I think that's wrong. I think the biggest thing that the government can do for us is create the right set of ecosystem measures and really make sure that compliance is easy and for business, so that we can focus on getting the business done rather than focusing on compliance. Yeah. And it's very true in payments, for example. So I'll give you an example. Tell me, let's look at US, for example. It takes 45 days to transfer money from one account to another bank account. In the last 3 years ago, this used to be reality. India has got infrastructure which the NPC has built. IMPS, NEFT, RTGS, and now we've got Aadhaar enabled payment systems. India Stack is coming. All of this is the kind of stuff you want government to do. You want government to create the rails on which new products can come. You don't want the government to say, okay, I'm going to reduce your tax burden by 2% and that's the end of it. So I think that's one. Second question is, the second thing the government can do is it use its enormous power to really create the right kind of adoption for these new products. For example, a lot of people ask me, do you think Beam is a competitor? It was launched by the Prime Minister, and do you think it's a competitor? My view is that, the only competitor I have today is cash. And our objective is to move consumers from the habit of using cash to the habit of using a digital payment.
Correct.
Everything that the government is doing to improve awareness for digital payments actually gets consumers to use digital payments.
Right.
And good for everybody in the industry. Yeah? So I think from that perspective, I think at least from the area of payments, from building India Stack, Aadhaar as an enabler, and the rails that we've built, there is no other country I can think of in the world that has this kind of
scale,
this kind of backbone, and this kind of scale. I mean, 1 billion people have Aadhaar. Imagine what it can do in payments.
Right. And I think
maybe for 1 second, building on that, if you look at the IT industry in India as an example, as long as the government created a policy that says, okay, you can import equipment duty free and a range of issues like that, and stayed out of this business, and look at how well the Indian IT industry responded and built scale, like you can see all around you, and the mark we made on a world branding, saying that served from India is as much of a brand like made in Japan for quality and for miniaturization. Look how well the sector responded when the government created transparent policies that promoted competition, that created some amount of confidence for entrepreneurs to come in and invest. So in my opinion, that should be the vision for the government, to create policies that are open, that are transparent, and that are at least reasonably stable over long periods of time, because that's what the entrepreneur wants. If the government does that part of the equation well, I am more than confident that corporate India and entrepreneurs in India will respond to solve that innovation problem, solve the job creation problem, etc. Because time and time again, Indians have proven that piece, there's enough animal spirit, whatever we've been coined on India, that spirit exists in India to make that vision a successful. Every time you have seen a problem is when the government starts getting involved in doing it. We typically have found that that's where they are inefficient. They don't understand the speed at which some of these things need to be done. I'm not criticizing the government. Their mental models, their framework, the checks and balances, all the things that go along with government are designed for something else.
Correct.
They are not designed for innovation. They are not designed for job creation. Entrepreneurs are best designed for that. So if they show us the policies that are beneficial, entrepreneurs in India will respond to that admirably.
Right. लेकिन रवि, ये मेरा सवाल आपसे है, जो रोस्टो ने अभी बात कही, just taking that forward. Mr. Modi himself had promised that one of the key targets of the government will be maximum governance and minimum government. Do you think there is a scope for further creating an atmosphere which actually lives up to that ease of doing business term which was coined?
Yeah, so I think, the first thing we should look back and reflect on where we are today versus where we were 5 years or 10 years ago.
Right.
Okay, so sometimes we get caught up in just the annual budget or the quarterly movement, right? And we kind of don't appreciate how far along we've come. I was on stage when we welcomed the Prime Minister at the StartUp India thing. The atmosphere was electric, right? And I think, what we should understand is the Prime Minister clearly understands that startups are a future growth engine. I think he clearly understands exactly what was echoed earlier, which is that the IT industry, which is now $140-50 billion industry, grew into that not because of the government, but because of, in spite of it, okay? Because he understands, and he said it himself. So he understands that getting the government out of the way is very important. I think he understands that hygiene in the economy is very important. He understands that removing friction is very important. I think not just does he understand it, but I think the folks tasked with pushing this forward, especially on the Startup India side, from Mr. Amitabh Kant, Mr. Ravish Abhishek, they understand it too. I think, they're pushing hard on all the machinations of the government to make this happen, right?
Right.
I think, we've seen lots of infrastructure, digital infrastructure being built out. These are the roads of tomorrow. So while we may not enjoy the best physical roads, I think we enjoy the beautiful digital roads, right? I think that's the potential. I think the other thing we have to understand is, it's a journey. It's not, we can't, I'm actually headed to Delhi on Monday, and we're having a first year anniversary of the Startup India launch, right? And, we will have the whole community there, and, I think people will review what's worked, what hasn't. And I think it's a process of refinement. It's a process of, kind of making the right little adjustments needed to get there. I think expectations are sky high because startups are hungry. I think, you've let somebody out of jail and he or she wants to devour everything, right? Because they've been denied for so long. So I think that's the first thing. I think, what we'll see is that clearly there are many things that can be improved. And I think, the government is listening to the voice of the community, is willing to act on many things, willing to move pretty fast. I think, while we are right to be impatient and keep demanding, I also think we should be part of the process, right?
Absolutely.
And keep pushing forward. So I think, we will see lots of small things fixed in the budget. I think, the government is acutely aware of lots of small things that would make it more frictionless, make it ease of business happen, allow capital inflows to come, allow liquidity to happen, allow revenue growth to happen, right? These are all the areas in which a startup needs help, in addition to removal of red tape, right? I think all of that they have, if you look at the Startup India plan and break it up into all these silos, you'll see ease of business is one, capital inflows is another, right? It's like a nurturing environment is a third, get out of the way is a fourth, right? It's like R&D type, incentives to kind of do more core R&D out of India is another, right? So I think in all of these fronts, you've seen some movement forward. I think, none of that is going to get done only in 12 months, like I said earlier. I think, over time, we'll see a lot of benefits from this.
But that intent is there.
Absolutely. I think, it's clearly there. And not only is the intent there, but the intent is there to get critical feedback, fix it, work with the stakeholders, and improve it. I think that's clearly evident.
Absolutely.
In fact, one of the government is always open to both criticism, feedback, and then constructively going back and renewing the policy.
Right.